Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all today who are listening to our 5x5 podcast. Today, we're joined by Eldin Rostom, who is a CEO and founder of a very cool company called Diagnose.io. I'm Kate Morgan. I'm a member of the LeagueMed team, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about LeagueMed before we jump in and get to know more about Eldin and Diagnose. LeagueMed's mission is to accelerate the pace of medical innovation by providing an investment platform targeted towards the medical community to allow them to invest in innovative new companies who are looking for funding to fuel their growth. Our dynamic hub has a lot of other information on it, from continuing education to innovative articles on recent innovations, as well as other member benefits. And we encourage you to take a look at it. It's free to join, leaguemed.com. And this is our 5x5 podcast. 5x5 is a term that is used in radio transmissions that means it's loud, 5, and clear, 5, if it's ultimately the best of both of those. And this podcast is to bring both a loudness and clarity to innovations in the medical field, like Diagnose has, to more listeners so they can choose to learn about it, invest in it, and help it grow. With that, we will jump in. And first, we want to learn a little bit about you. I think I remember hearing from you that at one point you wanted to be a motor car reporter. And you also kind of just studied mechanical engineering, which is not exactly what you're doing now, though I'm sure both of those skills somehow come into play. But tell us a little bit about your path to entrepreneurship and specifically to Diagnose.io.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me on the podcast. Motorsport engineer is not motor car reporter, but a very similar thing to some extent too.
Okay.
So a bit about my path. Okay. That could be a very, very, very long story. I'll try and cut it short. So for me, the path into medical innovation, I sort of stumbled into it. But there's two aspects to it. One is there's deep meaning and purpose because I've been a lifelong patient. And I'll expand on that in a bit.
Yeah.
And two was accidental in a way because I ended up, doing mechanical engineering. Let's start with that bit, the easiest bit. So I started doing mechanical engineering at Curtin University, and through them, I had this awesome team. We're doing motorsport engineering. We're building race cars every year, which was awesome. And it's the Formula Student SAE program, which was super awesome. It's basically engineers would just build this open wheel race car and then race it every year against the other universities and see who's the fastest. So that sounds pretty fun. And some of my mentors throughout universities were Formula One engineers, Formula One scientists. And back then I thought that was my lifelong dream to actually end up in Formula One and motorsport industry. I did land an interview after graduating, but I was back then. I still am to some extent a terrible interviewer.
No, you're great. We're loving this. It's awesome.
and that didn't pan out really, really well for me. So what ended up happening, it was this tremendous shift from what I thought my career path was set to be in that industry into medical health. And back then it was a comment actually by my partner, who's now my spouse, about, you're a pretty smart dude, pretty smart scientist. You could be using your skill set to make people's lives a little bit better rather than making cars a bit faster. So, a bit blunt, but I took that to heart, and this is sort of what led towards my journey into medical innovation. The first part I was mentioning was it's deeply, deeply personal. We every single founder I meet in this space has a deeply personal connection, right? So people have, family members or close ones that they've have been through health struggles and challenges that they've had to support through. Myself, I was born with toxoplasmosis in Mauritius. Do you know what toxoplasmosis is?
I do, because you told me about it before, but our listeners may not. So why don't you tell us to make sure everybody knows?
Yeah, so cat's disease, right? So it's a parasite that comes from cats, and that's one of the main reasons your clinician says to pregnant women to avoid cat litters, uncooked meat, and unwashed vegetables as well during pregnancy. It's one of these rare classes of diseases and pathogens um, called torch. It's the T in torch that can that can cross the placenta and cause irreparable damage to the fetus. Right, so you get it as an adult, it's like a cold, a flu, and it's fine. But if a pregnant woman contracts it, there's a relatively good chance that it might cross into the fetus. And for me, that was my birthing my birthing experience, really.
Right.
Unfortunately, my mother had it while she was pregnant of me. And at birth, I'm very lucky to be here today. My prognosis at birth wasn't really good. I'm right-eye blind. I had seizures. I had so many issues. I spent most of my life in hospital back home in Mauritius, where I was born. And this created this sense of responsibility in my heart that, when I read of the stories, my parents used to tell me the stories of the people who've actually came up with the solution of the drugs that I was taking. And I thought, who thought that'd be a good bedtime story of telling a kid about the people who came up with the medication that he's taking? But it had a really deep impact on me because I remember hearing the story of one of the lady scientists who came up, Gertrude Elion, who came up with her team and invented pyrimethamine, who was one of the drugs that we used for me. And it was, back then, still now, hundreds of years ago, and in a time of strife, although the world is still pretty dark and broken today too, I'll admit, but it was a time of, there was a lot of wars going on, there was no internet, there was less resources, and female scientists weren't really the norm, right? So she had a lot of setbacks and challenges, and she persevered. And because she did, I'm alive today.
I understand that part of your journey was to go to Stanford's EENT program, which is eye, ears, nose, and throat. And I think there you met team members that are currently or now your team members. But what was the inspiration to go to Stanford's program? And tell us a little bit about how that birthed what Diagnose IO is today.
Yeah, good question. Takes me back. Pre-COVID, it's all a blur now.
Yeah, is there a pre-COVID? Like, it's hard to remember what it was, right?
It feels like a different age. So Stanford's EENT program was a spin-off of their biodesign program taught by, similar faculty members as well, which is a great medical innovation program that Stanford has. And for me, the inspiration was, I wanted to so back then I was working with the technology transfer teams and some medical device entrepreneurs in Western Australia where I was. And there was this opportunity to sort of do further studies and go through that program, right? And because and my university and another organization was looking at funding me for two reasons. One was because I had, the technical ability to be able to understand science and sort of disseminate these complex scientific concepts into, bite-sized information to communicate it, but also lead technical teams towards progress. And secondly, I had the commercial edge to be able to want to get technologies out of the lab into the hands of patients and
Yeah.
the drive and the passion to do so, right? So putting two and two together, I said, okay, well, there's this opportunity for this program, and we think you'd be a great fit. My answer back then was, I am broke. I have no money. If you give me a scholarship, I would consider it, which they did, thankfully. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And the main intent for me there, so you're correct. So it was EENT, which is eyes, ears, nose, and throat. And my main motivation for attending the program was to drive meaningful innovation in the ophthalmology and eye space, right? Because I'm right-eye blind and I've got, pretty bad prognosis of being potentially losing eyesight on the other side too at some point, and for a variety of reasons. And that was the main motivation for me. But when I got there and you meet all the other people, I met my co-founders, so Dr. Yen, Dr. Wong, and Dr. Shu, David Bryan and Jersey, who are absolutely incredible humans. And we spent a lot of time together debating about, okay, what the future of medicine would look like, specifically in their space, which was rhinology, right? Which is, nasal airway sort of medicine. And that was it. That was the inception for Diagnose back then. We spoke to it gave us what we call our unique insight. We discovered a unique insight, which is, medicine today still runs by what we call population averages, right? We do randomized controlled trials based on a heterogeneous population of patients, and it's just some people fall on the bell curve that they respond to some drugs really well, and some people fall on either side of the bell curve. They don't respond, and they respond miraculously well. And our main insight was that the world within the next 10, 20 years will transition from population averages to what we call personalized and precision medicine, is understanding that every single individual has unique features, unique biological features specifically, that make them more amenable to responding to specific drugs. And for me, that was very deeply, deeply personal, because in my life story, I spent a lot of time trialing drugs. Pyrimethamine was one of the drugs that worked for me, but before that, before I figure out what was happening there, I had so many different trials and trial and error for different drugs that didn't work. And back then, in the 90s, I was okay with it. In 2025, 2026, with all this advancements in technology, you still wonder, why can't we find the right drug for patients?
Right, right. So I want to read the mission of Diagnose, because I think it's a good time to introduce this now. And then our next thing we want to talk about is kind of what your breakthrough is, what the science is. So Diagnose's mission is eliminating respiratory disease forever, or eliminating respiratory disease, period, forever. Diagnose IO is mapping the unified airway to deliver AI-powered precision diagnostics and discover life-changing therapies. I think that speaks a lot to the idea that with all the technology we have available, the personalized idea, rather than, okay, your symptoms look like this, I'll try this, it might work, it might not, and then we'll try the other thing and it might work and it might not. But the idea that through omics and AI and other ways of specifically diagnosing personally what's wrong with somebody is a super exciting field in a lot of different areas. Oncology, I know, is one of them. So tell us a little bit about how RhinoMap does that in the ENT space.
Yeah, excellent question. There's so many threads there. The first thing is, we deeply believe in biology as a source of truth, right? It is something that is, for a lack of a better word, continuous, existent, that you can't debate, you can't argue with. It's facts, not how, someone feels on a specific day, or how they think their care management or care plan should go. And for us, we use
I want
this
to draw that out a little bit and make that point really clear. So diagnosing is asking somebody what they're feeling mostly, rather than understanding the biology of what is.
Yeah, and current standard of care can use multiple sources of truth, including imaging, including symptoms, including functional tests and questionnaires and so forth. And for us, we think all of these are great tools.
Yeah.
But the one tool that would add to that and would provide even substantialized data that is more objective is biology. And it cannot, that's something that is, so the unique insight that we have, the companies, we say patients can look symptomatically similar, but can be biologically different. And this is one of the core foundational ideas that we build a company on, and that if, one day we wake up and we don't believe in this anymore, the company shouldn't exist.
Hmm.
Because for us, and current research agrees with us that, even in the chronic sinusitis space or asthma or COPD, a lot of our definitions of what these patients are, the medical terminology and definitions has been made 20, 30, 40 years ago based on, these patients conform to a certain set of symptoms and clinical presentation. And that's what define what an asthmatic is. And these tend to be very broad overlapping symptoms as well, right? So, wheezing and chest, shortness of breath and so forth. Whereas for us, we believe that the true definition of disease always ties back to biology. And in the next 10, 20, 30 years, definition of a lot of our diseases that we know, especially chronic disease, will evolve to incorporate some form of the underlying biology, because this will help segregate patients into better sort of categories that would make treatment plans a bit more precise and a bit more effective for them. And this is not a new concept by any means, maybe in a chronic disease space, but it has been very, very remarkably well put to use in the oncology and the cancer space, right? We've someone had I don't know, leukemia, for example, they would genotype and understand, okay, do they have specific variants, they have resistance to specific drugs, and so forth, and to be able to come up with a short list of therapy that is best for that specific patients. And we think this is the future of chronic disease.
Hmm.
Your second question was about how do we enable that, right? So for us, the core mission is to create the biggest, let's call it the atlas, the biggest biological atlas of respiratory disease, to understand human respiratory biology. I said the word biology so many times, so
Oh, right. No, no.
so
I love the word. I love the thinking about the atlas of respiratory disease and the biology of that. I love that.
because as a statement, I don't know, I don't remember the actual stats on it, but from memory, we understand more about the night sky and how it looks like all the different constellations that we do about our own the interactions between the proteins and different analytes within our body called the interactome. So we know a lot more about the night sky than we know about ourselves, which is pretty
Hmm.
crazy from a molecular biology interaction perspective. So for us, we think this is one of the greatest frontiers where there's a lot of gains to be made, especially with the advent of AI, to be able to better understand biology. And with better understanding respiratory biology, not only can you diagnose people earlier to put them on the right care plan, you can also individualize those care plans to put them on the right drug that has, best chance of success with least chance of adverse events and side effects. But also you can go further. You can develop better new drugs that could potentially eliminate disease.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
So I want to ask about the RhinoMap and how that works and what the innovation is there. But I want to say what I heard, which is with better diagnosis, it's quicker, it's better on the patient, it's better for the family, it's better for the healthcare system because you get to the answer quicker, there's less suffering, less time, less resources, kind of as a win-win situation for the entire healthcare system and the families of the patient as well. I'm sure your parents through a lot of pain with as did you in your childhood. And if some of that can be shortened or mitigated, then that's a win-win kind of both psychologically as well as financially for the healthcare system.
absolutely. And the development of new and better drugs as well,
Yeah.
because we can
Yeah. Because
always
you can
do
learn.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can learn. All right. So tell us about RhinoMap and what is innovative about which is groundbreaking.
Yep. Yep. Good question. So essentially what we say, and in our mission statement, we say we're mapping the unified airway, right? So the unified airway by itself is a principle, and do not confuse it with United Airways. Very, very different thing.
I
You
didn't
might
even think that, but now that you said it, I can't not think it.
you might come up with very different thing there. So essentially, it's a principle that says that there's for specific diseases like asthma, there's certain continuity between your nose all the way to your lungs, right? They're not in isolation and should therefore be treated as a continuous system. The really crude analogy that I use is, if you have a garden hose connected to a tap and it's, and there's water coming out on one end, if you squeeze one end, the water will stop at the other side, right? So the repercussions in one part of the system is felt throughout the entire system. And there's multiple scientific reasons for this, and basically because of this shared epithelial lining. And there's different trains of thoughts about how this happens too. And there's other trains of thoughts about another model called the field of injury that sort of overlaps to some extent. But on a very, very, very crude and high level, this means that you can use the nose as a window to measure lung biology.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And for us, that is fascinating because to be able to measure lung biology today, the most accurate way to do this is to have some form of biopsy or bronchoscopy, right? Through bronchoscopy. So, someone would, you would be under sedation and the clinician would put a bronchoscopy, a camera down your airway and to be able to find out, okay, specific locations where they can actually collect. Either they have fluids that they can sort of extract, or they can have, they can take an actual tissue sample as well. And this procedure is, as you can imagine, a lot of super expensive. It's not without risk as well.
Invasive. It's invasive.
Invasive and is performed way less commonly than, someone has a nasal swab, for example.
Right, right. So a
And
lot of things
and
go undiagnosed because it's so invasive and expensive and time consuming to do the biopsy, that a lot of things go undiagnosed.
potentially, in a way. So from our perspective, is there's a lot of gains to be made by understanding lung biology, and we needed a way to do so non-invasively, so that it could be democratized in um, to the general public, regardless of whether someone had access to an operating theater, for example, or whether someone had access to, um, to be able to get a lung biopsy taken.
So,
And
and the RhinoMap does that. How does it do that? Is there a scientific or a technical innovation that helps it do that?
yep. So essentially, one of the platform itself has three components. So one is what we call a nasal liquid biopsy device. So it's like a tiny, tiny balloon that you insert within your nose. It sits, at one of the locations called the inferior turbinate, and then it just expands and sits there for about 2 minutes, and then it just soaks in the nasal epithelial lining fluid. Right after 2 minutes, what happens is the balloon collapses. We take it out, and then we send it to the lab to extract all sorts of analytes, or what we call biomarkers, right? So things that are called proteins or metabolites. We've looked at lipids, we've looked at microbiomes, we've looked at RNA and DNA. And essentially what these are what called biological fingerprints, not your literal fingerprints.
Yeah.
Because someone asked me that question before, do you collect people's fingerprints? It's like, no. Biological fingerprints are essentially the blueprint of how your body is working on a biochemical molecular level at any point in time. And essentially what we're trying to do is better understand these molecular fingerprints to link them to, okay, these specific group of patients with this signature are more amenable to respond to drug A, and these ones are more amenable to respond to drug B. These ones with this signature means that they will have severe side effects to drug C, and he can then categorize and individualize the treatment plan based on the underlying biology. And essentially what the RhinoMap platform helps, and this is, sorry, so I skipped the last part here. So we collect the sample, extract the biomarkers, and then the third part is we use machine learning or AI algorithms to be able to classify these patients based on different use cases, whether disease is progressing, whether they're responding to a drug, whether they have side effects, whether the drug is responding as intended or dosing the drug and so forth. You can do all sorts of different things. Our focus right now are monoclonal antibody therapies, the biologics, so like dupilumab and mepolizumab and so forth, because they're very new in this space, and they are more targeted therapies that require such approach compared to, oral steroids, which it's the equivalent of, just blasting the inflammation throughout your body.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
so that's how the approach the RhinoMap platform, that what we're trying to build is to make something that is ubiquitous, that could be used anywhere, regardless of where you are in the world, as long as you have, the ability to collect a nasal sample and some laboratory infrastructure without requiring, you know, um, operations theater level sort of grade of equipment and having invasive sort of procedures to be able to provide access, democratizing access to lung biology, because we think this will lead to, like we were saying before, earlier diagnosis, better treatment matching, and also more importantly, discovering new drugs.
Cool. So if Diagnose IO is does it include the nasal collection? So it's the collection, and then it's the platform, and it's the continual learning that the platform provides about, how to segment the disease states into different areas that would match best with different drugs. That was a very non-technical description, if you
That's
noticed, but
That's absolutely correct. You have the microsampler, the device side, and then you have the chemistry side on how you extract and analyze it in the lab, and then
yeah.
you have the software side of how the algorithms um, makes extracts useful information out of this biomarker data.
So it's going to get better and better and better all the time, which is so cool, right? That's
Yes, the more you learn about biology, the more use cases will open up, hopefully.
all right. So let's look at it from the business side. Obviously,
Sure.
this is a business. You are raising funds now to take your company to the next level. Um, respiratory disease is growing and growing and growing. So the market potential for the need is definitely growing with the growth of respiratory disease. But how would you describe the market opportunity now and its growth potential in the future?
Yep, yep. So,
And I would say let's
so
include the TAM. Like, how big is the market? Can you put a number on how big the market is?
yeah, respiratory disease, including asthma and COPD, are one of the leading causes of death in the world. So COPD is the third biggest killer in the world, right? It's called smoker's lung disease. And on a market size level, you have around 500 million around the world that suffer from respiratory disease,
Half a
and
billion people.
500 million people.
Okay,
That's
yep.
quite a
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
significant amount of patients that would require some, help to be able to get on the right treatment. And for us specifically, we by deliberate choice right now, we are focusing on what we call the severe asthma or refractory patients, the one that have really severe form of disease and try something and it doesn't work and keep trying different medications. And they're the ones who don't really know it, right? They experience terrible interruptions um, in their daily lives from a quality of life perspective, and they're the ones who are at risk of getting hospitalized. They are also the ones who are at risk of dying. We know in the United States we have 10 asthma deaths a day, so it's not trivial. And from a cost of care perspective, the severe form of the disease, whether that's asthma or chronic sinusitis or COPD, account on average for 60 or 70% of the healthcare usage and expenditures for that specific disease category, right? So severe asthma accounts for 60 to
Yeah.
70% of asthma-related healthcare expenditures. So for us, this is what we call the beachhead market, and we think there's incredible impacts and to be made from both a patient health and medical and outcomes perspective, but also the economics side of things with payer organizations and the cost savings and and the actual time savings as well.
Yep. And do you have a number of how big the market is from a revenue perspective of what you can do?
Yep. So our calculations at the moment is working on when we look at a global severe asthma, our calculation is working on which is, again, I'll preface that the severe form of the disease is 4 to 5% of the whole disease
Yep.
spectrum. So it would be 4 to 5% of the
Yep.
500 million number.
Yep.
And from a total addressable market perspective, in our core market, we have top 8 markets that we're looking for, including the United States, of course, and some parts of Europe, is around $60 billion from a market opportunity. So that's, all the patients that are available based on, the prevalence of disease, but also
Yep.
the new cases, the incidents that come up every year, and relative to the average pricing and coverage that we think we are able to collect with our platform.
Okay, so a big market to play in.
Absolutely.
And where are you in the clinical trials, going to market? Where are you in that stage?
Yep. So we've completed a recent feasibility study in 70 patients. That was conducted by one of my co-founders, so Dr. Yen in Pennsylvania. And essentially where we're moving next is we are doing we've done a bunch of R&D since then to improve the platform, and we're now what we call our pivotal study. So essentially we are running a 1,200 patient study to be able to validate some of these algorithms at scale on a statistically significant sort of patient population size, and then able to commercialize these through the laboratory test pathway in the United States. So for us, we are approximately, this study is running at the moment. We have multiple sites that are recruiting across with Australia. We've got some sites in the United States that have been set up as well. The timeline for this is about 2 years, and the timeline for commercialization and launch and the first test being used commercially after that is, we're aiming for within 6 months. So within 3 years' time, the product will be on market and hopefully helping patients as well.
And during those 3 years, you're continuing to build the data on the platform to refine even more or train the model even more in terms of outcomes.
Absolutely. And I was going to add, we're very excited about all the potential opportunities that this platform presents. So at the same time, we're exploring partnerships with academics and also big pharmaceutical companies to be able to expand, to look at separate indications, right? So not necessarily asthma. We have some studies we're looking at sarcoidosis, we're looking at lung cancer, we're looking at one of the other academic projects looking at air pollution as well as a theme. So all sorts of different indications to build the database in addition to our main clinical study, which is focusing on asthma, COPD, and sinusitis.
Which means your TAM is even bigger than 60 billion because those applications would allow you to service patients in other areas too.
Potentially.
Yep.
It's very early days, but the evidence is very promising.
Very, very cool. So tell us a little bit, you're not brand new, you're a couple of years old, you were founded in 2022, 21?
Yep, so 2020 actually, mid-2020, in the middle of
2020,
COVID.
okay.
And most
Oh my
people were
God,
asking me, why aren't you making a COVID test? And for us,
Right.
it was, the first reason was everybody was making a COVID test back then. And for us, it was that simple belief that what we're building is something that is generational and it would last. It wouldn't
Yep.
be dependent on a pandemic scale
Right.
event to happen, because chronic
Yeah.
disease, especially chronic respiratory disease, affects people of all ages throughout the years, throughout history, right?
Throughout history. Yeah.
So mid-2020, we grown from a team of four co-founders to around 15 so far, excluding the board and advisors. We've got about a team of 11 full-time, including, a lot of PhDs. Half of our companies are female scientists and PhDs, which we're super proud on, in terms of what we're looking for, in terms of collaborations, and some of these other cross collaborations and diversity metrics as well. And so we've got molecular scientists, we've got biostatistical people, data scientists, and biologists as well.
And up until this point, you've been funded by by angel investors?
Yeah, so we have a combination of so bootstrapping. So the founders have significant skin in the game for the company. We've invested significant amount of our own resources. We've had clinical colleagues who are champions and who are super excited about the opportunity of what this platform would do for the future of medicine that have invested. We also have family offices and venture capital firm. There's Artesian, Radar, and Breakthrough Victoria, which are 3 venture funds that are backing us at this point in time, venture capital firms.
That's great. And you are now looking to raise additional funds for your next phase of growth. So let's talk a little bit about your roadmap development and revenue. And I think we've covered that a little bit already. It's about 3 years till it comes to market, and there'll be a lot of development between here and there. But you're now raising money to help get you through that 3 years, or what's the specific use case for the money that you're raising now?
Yeah, absolutely. So this whole roadmap as well moving forward is subsidized by a federal government grant. So we've been awarded a $2 million grant.
By the Australian or the US government?
Sorry, so Australian government grant is 3 million Australian, 2 million US roughly. So that's sort of the conversion metrics there. That is subsidizing nearly half of the studies that the cost of the studies that we are delivering at the moment. And so essentially, the money that we're raising will help build what we call 3 pillars of evidence, right? So one is the clinical evidence, is the data in the clinical trials, and how does the platform work, how well does it work, how reproducible, how translatable it is, and so forth. Second is the regulatory evidence work, which is how standardizable is it, how well does it meet the regulatory requirements for both the clear laboratory test pathway, but also we are in parallel investigating the FDA pathway as well, which is separate to the laboratory test sort of developed test pathway in the United States. And the third one is expanding the number of partnerships that we're able to deliver and generate more data on some of these pipeline indications as well, to be able to expand the capabilities of this platform, not just from a diagnostic, but also from a drug discovery perspective.
Super. Is there anything else you would like listeners to know who could be potential investors or people who are interested in your company? Is there anything else you'd like them to know that we didn't cover?
I think in general that we're very picky about the types of investors that come on board, and in general we look for people who are passionate about, we care about the same mission that we're trying to solve, which is essentially for us eliminating respiratory disease forever. And we think whether that's a 50 or 100 or 500-year quest, this is the sort of legacy we're trying to build with the organization. So investors that dream big and are looking to tackle similar problems of this size. Also, people who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and help. A lot of our angel investors, we're really grateful that they have been very helpful, whether that's with introductions, whether that's with key opinion leadership, whether that's with clinical trial sites and helping us recruit more patients and so forth, and access to hospitals. So these are the types of people, and we usually have a lot of fun talking to them in general and exchanging stories. So these are the type of people we look forward to talking to.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, for joining us today for our 5x5 podcast. Those who are interested in learning more about Diagnose can find all the investment materials on the LeagueMed platform. You do need to be an accredited investor in order to access those, but there is an easy way to do so on the site, and you can transact right on the site to invest in Diagnose if you choose to do so. And check it out, leaguemed.com. You can find Diagnose under investment opportunities. And we hope you all visit that site and learn more about Diagnose and learn more about LeagueMed. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me, Kate. It was a pleasure to be here.